That's why I'm here. It's ethically and morally wrong. A blind man can see this is fraud on the grandest of scales.
The system's rigged against the patient.
It's really not insurance, is it?
All this is money.
They're robbing all the consumers.
I would call it profiteering and greed. They don't want you telling the truth.
Correct.
You think it comes down to money?
Absolutely. All this is money. This has nothing to do with consumer health or anything else. It has everything to do about money.
Does that seem right to you?
No.
Yeah.
No, I feel cheated. Everyone else should too.
It's not like I'm buying a car. This is my son's life. This is his health. This is his well-being.
They're taking advantage of people, and worse yet, they're taking advantage of elderly people and people who are sick. They're taking advantage of the most vulnerable people. It's ridiculous. Is it just about a money grab now in healthcare?
Hammond, Louisiana is stuck between New Orleans and Baton Rouge, 45 minutes in each direction from the state's two most populated cities. Hammond has a connection to our nation's capital, a significant connection between two cities 1,100 miles apart, a connection you don't know about until now. It will allow millions of Americans like you to save money when buying prescription medication. Here's why. In October, President Trump signed a bill that will lower health care costs. That bill received bipartisan support. You don't hear that much lately in Washington, D.C. The bill, a result of a series of interviews done by a Louisiana pharmacist.
It's fraud, in my opinion.
Honest but afraid of the consequences of his identity being uncovered.
Most people think having insurance reduces their prices. That's why you buy insurance.
Correct.
But that's not happening in some cases.
That's absolutely correct.
The pharmacist, a whistleblower who provided us with information that changed federal law. That pharmacist from Hammond, Louisiana. Tonight, for the first time, you'll meet him, see his face, hear his real voice. But first, the stories that got us here. Millions of Americans being charged a secret premium. Healthcare providers overcharging for prescription medication, costing you hard-earned money. A scheme we labeled a you-pay. When you go to the pharmacy, your insurance plan typically has a rather simple payment structure. Your insurer picks up some of the cost, you cover the rest. What's called a copay. Co has a fairly easy to understand definition, jointly or together with another. Here's why we labeled it a you-pay. That Hammond pharmacist gave us a stack of documents, dozens of prescriptions his pharmacy filled. Here's one for an anxiety drug. The pharmacist received $2.61 from the pharmacy benefit manager, or PBM. The customer paid $15. It's even labeled a copay. The PBM then told the pharmacist to send the leftover money back to them, $12.39. So the PBM and insurance company didn't contribute anything to the purchase. That copay became a you-pay, and the PBM essentially charged the customer a hidden, secret premium. An additional $12.39, more profit for the PBM and insurance company, more money out of the customer's pocket.
I agree. No, they're actually getting paid to, every time that patient comes in, they're making more money because the patient needed a prescription. Absolutely. Right. Yeah. There's no copay, right? No, that's an absolute additional premium being paid that they're paying and they don't realize it.
We exposed the scheme but didn't know the companies behind it. The pharmacist had no idea. Look at the documents. They had obscure labels for coverage or companies. This one, DTP, another SMD. No recognizable label of a familiar company or insurance plan. But figuring out who's behind the scheme didn't take much time. Tucked next to those obscure letters, a phone number. We quickly figured out DTP and SXC were connected to Optum Rx, a PBM related to United Healthcare, the country's largest health insurer.
Thank you for calling the Optum Rx Pharmacy Help Desk.
Optum Rx.
We also dialed numbers for Humana, Cigna, and Aetna. Those four are the most prominent companies connected to this scheme. Here's why this pharmacist took great effort to hide his identity.
You have a contract with Optum.
Yes,
It prevents you from saying anything.
correct.
If Optum found out who you are,
Oh, they would come out. They would come after me. They would want to kick me out of network because we're not supposed to disclose anything.
they don't want you telling the truth.
Correct.
Why?
Because people will be outraged if they knew that they were actually paying an extra premium every time they had a prescription filled.
Pharmacists had gag clauses with insurance companies and PBMs. It prevented them from helping their customers save money. The insurers wanted the pharmacists to be robots, fill a prescription, no matter what cost the PBM gave them. This letter explains the reason behind the covert interviews. Optum Rx sent it to a pharmacist after it discovered the pharmacy advised customers utilizing a cash price for their prescriptions was a better deal than using their insurance benefits. Optum told the pharmacist that advice violated their agreement. Optum assured the pharmacist they take these matters very seriously and ordered the pharmacist to reply in writing. The letter ended with more threats. Failure to timely respond and comply could result in further disciplinary action up to and including termination from all Optum Rx pharmacy networks. A termination would put most pharmacists out of business. Many kids learn to play dodgeball at an early age. The best dodgeball players can react quickly. They avoid the ball with swift movements. An email exchange with an Optum spokesperson felt like a game of dodgeball. We aimed our ball at a spokesperson with questions, but each time he tried to move out of the way with a sudden, quick answer. The exchange started with a statement from Optum. The spokesperson told us Optum Rx's pharmacy reimbursement overpayment program helps ensure the millions of people we serve have affordable access to the drugs they need by recouping overpayments pharmacies receive for prescription drugs. What stood out about the statement, the capital letters in the second, third, and fourth words. Capital letters usually indicate a proper noun, a real thing. So we threw the dodgeball back at Optum and told them we Googled the program name and didn't find any documentation or reference to it on the internet. The Optum spokesperson jumped out of the way again. Minutes later, he responded with a new statement. Those capital letters went lowercase, and the statement changed to this. Optum Rx's pharmacy reimbursement program helps ensure the millions of people we serve have affordable access to the drugs they need by ensuring they pay the lowest price available to them for prescription drugs. We also repeatedly asked Optum for an on-camera interview. In this email, in this one, and another, and yet another. The spokesperson quickly dodged those questions too, sometimes flat out ignoring them. We never got that interview. One morning, we sent the spokesperson a list of questions looking for documentation and wondering why customers weren't told it's a U-Pay and not a copay. We told Optum our deadline was close of business that day, which was a Friday. The Optum spokesperson waited the weekend and most of Monday to respond, apologizing for the delay, but not answering anything. We once again asked for an interview and told him we wanted more details for our story that Monday night. This game of dodgeball took a turn when the spokesperson called us Bush League for not giving him a deadline. We referenced the earlier email when we gave him a Friday close of business deadline. Our game of dodgeball ended when he apologized for the Bush League crack and said it was momentary frustration. That's the last time we heard from that Optum spokesperson, but our next contact seemed to play the same game of dodgeball. We asked that different spokesperson about that letter where Optum threatened the pharmacist who told the customer the cash price would be cheaper. Optum asked us, would that pharmacy share the letter? That is not consistent with our practices and would be interested in seeing the hard copy. We sent a redacted letter and got this response. Thanks for sending. I'm going to look into this. That's when the game of dodgeball stopped. Optum wouldn't respond. Even when we asked directly, did you ever get an answer on the letter? For this question, Optum took its ball and brought it home. We still haven't heard back. The internet has transformed journalism. With just a click of the button, anyone in the world can see and read the stories we produce. It's one click away. If someone in New Orleans shares our story on social media, it can be seen by friends all over the country and seen by hundreds of thousands of people who would never have watched that story prior to the digital revolution. At this point in our investigation, we knew the overcharging occurred at some pharmacies in Louisiana, but we still didn't have a full grasp of the scope. But that soon changed. Emails began flooding in from pharmacists all over the country. One thanked us for making the issue public. Another in New York told us this is a huge moneymaker for Optum Rx. A Baltimore pharmacist wrote, "This is a national issue." We literally received hundreds of emails from pharmacists in nearly every state. Many sent us more examples of customers being overcharged. 2 even gave us the proof in spreadsheets showing hundreds of their customers paid more than the cash price. Pharmacists silenced by gag clauses now had a voice.
And I don't know how in today's day and age, how anybody can think that that's legal or ethical or moral.
This pharmacy owner showed us one example of a customer overcharged $2,000 for medication a doctor prescribed to treat high blood pressure.
It's just unadulterated greed. Everybody's overpaying.
The economics of this scheme make no sense for the consumer.
You buy insurance for the reason of lowering your prescription drug costs, but more and more, patients are able to find prescriptions less expensive if they don't use their insurance than if they do.
Story after story continue to point out the scheme, while the companies behind them remain silent.
I think the most generous would call it capitalism. I would call it profiteering and greed in many cases, because it's not a fair system. If it was a fair system where the consumer could say, I'm choosing a more expensive product, or I'm choosing to go to a more expensive pharmacy, that would be capitalism in my opinion. But because it's opaque and the consumer can't or doesn't know, I think it's greed and profiteering.
But the most meaningful responses came from consumers like Nikki, whose son had a rare eye condition.
From information from his ophthalmologist, it's allergic conjunctivitis that's more rare and found mostly in African American males, young African American males.
Her son's doctor prescribed an eye drop. The cost?
$473.
How do you afford that?
I can't, honestly, I can't. And I mean, as a single parent, I felt like I was failing by not being able to provide the health care that he deserves.
After seeing our medical waste investigation, Nikki started doing some research.
I feel like I have options now, as a consumer, but more than anything as a parent.
She found paying for the drug without her insurance was much cheaper. That $473 eye drop costs less than $35.
It's not like I'm buying a car. This is my son's life. This is his health. This is his well-being. It almost feels like these drug companies are taking advantage of folks. They're taking advantage.
This Slidell woman figured out United and Optum overcharged her too.
Cheated, highly cheated, because we pay prime premiums for our insurance.
She found a $15 hidden premium on a thyroid medication.
I have found, looking at my receipts, that more of my prescriptions than not, I could buy cheaper without my insurance.
And does that seem right to you?
No.
Definitely getting ripped off. They're getting robbed.
The internet allowed us to hear from consumers all across the country too, like from Rick, who lives in New Jersey. He found our medical waste stories online and sent us an email. The subject, United overcharging for drugs.
Of course it angers me. It's like, why are the drug companies robbing us and robbing all the consumers?
Rick sent us these receipts. Through his United insurance, the pharmacist charged him $52 for prescription eye drops. Without insurance, it cost him a lot less, $12.
How am I being overcharged? By using that card? I'm being robbed. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, how does the government allow something this? They don't see this?
And we've heard from some people who received refunds. Miss Priscilla has Aetna Insurance, another company we found overcharging. Aetna sent Priscilla a $400 check and a long list of prescription drugs they charged her too much money for. She credits our investigative series.
They were overcharging you under the Part D program for prescription drugs.
Right.
In this check, you think they essentially admit to it.
They tried to correct something.
Aetna has not admitted to the practice or told us how many refund checks it sent out, but Miss Priscilla is thankful for the extra money.
I've got it spent already.
You do? What'd you spend it on?
I made a payment on my automobile.
We empowered viewers to ask their pharmacist if their prescription would be cheaper without insurance. They listened.
It's distressing, the amount of money you pay for insurance. I pay between $600 and $700 a month for a premium. Because I'm a single person, I don't have a company, getting any discounts with big group insurance policies. So it's very distressing. You're already spending a ton of money on insurance, but you still have to pay for, all of the extra.
Carol Shoemaker says she buys most of her prescriptions without using insurance, like a $277 cream she found for under $12.
For me, that's just too much money to be, throwing out the window.
Medical waste led to 13 federal lawsuits. OptumRx stopped its pharmacy reimbursement program, the one where they overcharge customers. Early on in our investigation, we brought our findings to U.S. Senator Bill Cassidy, who's also a doctor.
The patient is subsidizing the entity which is supposed to be their advocate.
Cassidy took our findings to Congress and in September passed a bill the president signed that prevents those gag clauses. Pharmacists can now tell customers when a cheaper price exists. Cassidy says this bill resulted from our investigation.
And it all began with a pharmacist talking to you and talking to me, and then you speaking with me, and that representative government working. This is a victory for representative government. This is how it is supposed to work.
It all began with this pharmacist.
Hey, Lee. Good seeing you again.
Good to see you. You doing all right?
Doing fine, thank you.
What do you think about your face being shown on TV?
A little scary. A little scary.
Scary, but now unafraid of any consequences.
Well, the thing is, because now we got that gag clause lifted, we can get other pharmacists who've been talking and fighting for the people in the United States for years, that finally we can actually freely talk about it. So when the patient comes to that counter and talks to the pharmacist, we're no longer worried about getting pulled out of network or somebody suing us and this kind of stuff.
This is Ricky Menino, a longtime pharmacist of an independent pharmacy in Hammond, Louisiana.
I haven't done anything.
He's modest, but it's a fact the owner of this pharmacy helped change a federal law, help Democrats and Republicans come together.
Incredibly huge. It's incredibly huge that finally someone like yourself has taken this issue and put it out on a stage that no one could ignore. And remember, as well as you did it, it still took 2 years to finally get something done on a national level. Finally, with this gag clause lifted, we can really start talking to the patient individually and really maybe get across to them what's going on. This will save lives too, because people are actually having to choose between their medication and food And do they pay their insurance premium?
On this day, Ricky Menino met one of his senators, the one who listened to his interview and brought his story to Washington, D.C.
Sure appreciate all your help. You're way too kind. You guys did it. I just passed along a message.
For decades, the pharmaceutical industry has had a stranglehold on the Capitol.
I think the Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Association has been the #1 lobbyist in Washington since 1998. Look where that's gotten us. You know, the definition of stupidity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, right, and expecting a different outcome. It's time to stop listening to those guys. Listen to the people in the trenches.
But when Cassidy proposed the bill, the industry remained surprisingly silent.
The great thing about this bill, it was so embarrassing to the industry that they did not fight back against it. Because how do you defend gagging a pharmacist from working on behalf of his patients? There is no defense. So once exposed, the people that actually put these gag clauses in the contracts retreated.
If pharmacists are able to speak to their customers, advise, and help them, money will be saved.
It gives me hope that, because this isn't the tip of the iceberg. This is just the snow on the top of the iceberg. But with this bill and with the removal of the gag clauses, I'm hoping that people will understand that when it comes to listening about what's really going on in the healthcare industry and drug pricing, listen to your pharmacist.
Congress listened to this brave pharmacist from Hammond, Louisiana.
We need folks who will stick up for the patient, for the advocate, to push back against these people who wish to dominate our lives.
Ricky Menino's 63 years old. When we asked him when he planned to retire, he laughed. Not anytime soon. He loves his job, loves helping his customers. He's humble, but this pharmacist from Hammond, Louisiana, will save Americans money. He helped change a federal law exposing millions of dollars of medical waste.